Welcome to SecedNowUSA.com. Our goal is to explain what is happening in the United States in easy-to-understand videos. This video explains how the Fed creates inflation by printing money. I hope you enjoy the video.
Father, we have talked about how the Federal Reserve creates money and how they have protected the large banks by getting Congress to bail out their bad loans. But I feel there is a lot more that you haven't told us. What else do we need to know about the Fed?
Let's review some of what we've already covered. You now know that the Fed is not owned by the federal government. You know that it is a private cartel sanctioned by the Congress. Its primary goal is to protect the large banks and to pass their losses on to the taxpayers. You also know that the banks, in conjunction with the Fed, create money through fractional reserve banking. And, now you understand that there really isn't much money in the banks. Possibly 90% less than would be needed if everyone wanted their money back at once. And, I think you are beginning to see that our money isn't really backed by anything.
How is that possible? I remember that the Constitution says something about Congress having the power to coin money. I always understood that the phrase coining money meant to mint coins out of gold or silver. I don't see anything in the Constitution that authorizes them to print paper money.
That's true. However, there is nothing wrong with the concept of paper money as long as the government maintains an equal amount of gold or silver to redeem that paper money. You are probably too young to remember that our paper money used to say that it was redeemable for gold or silver right on the bill. The bills no longer say that. In fact, if you look at the top of every bill, it now says Federal Reserve Note.
So, Father, what is our money backed by now?
It's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States government. Which is another way of saying that our money is not backed by anything. It's referred to as fiat currency. Fiat currency is any money declared by a government to be legal tender, but is not backed by a physical commodity.
What kind of problems does fiat currency create?
If the Fed prints too much paper money, it will result in inflation. Think of it this way. Let's assume that both of you have $10,000. And, let's assume that I have a piece of land that you would like to buy. The most that you can pay for the land is $10,000. Now, let's assume that the Fed prints a lot more paper money so that now both of you have $20,000. Now each of you can afford to bid the price of the land up.
But, aren't we all better off? We both have more money and we can afford to pay you more for your land.
It may seem that way. But why would you want to pay more money for the same piece of land? And the money I receive is really only worth $10,000. And it will only purchase $10,000 worth of goods. That's because the price of everything else will go up when there is more money in circulation.
So, I don't see what the problem is. If the expanded amount of money will still purchase the same amount of goods, then no one is hurt.
What you don't see is that inflation tends to rise faster than people's wages. That means that each year people's earnings will purchase less and less. Since the Fed was created 100 years ago, the value of the dollar has decreased by 97%. That means that someone would have to earn $33,000 today to purchase the same amount that they could have purchased with $1,000 of income in 1913. And, since there was no income tax in 1913, the after-tax purchasing power is even less today. To put that into some perspective, in 1976 a family earning minimum wage could have purchased a very nice home with 28% of their income. Today, it would take 91% of their minimum wage income to buy the same home. So, you can see that incomes have not kept pace with the rate of inflation. And, it should now be clear that inflation is not caused by rising prices. Inflation is caused by the dollar being devalued.
So, what you are saying is that rising prices are the result of the dollar being devalued. When the dollar is devalued, then it takes more of them to purchase the same stuff.
Now you are catching on.
Is there anyone who benefits from inflation?
Generally, two groups of people benefit from inflation. The first group is those closest to the government.
What does that mean?
It means those people who get paid with the new money first, before inflation has had a chance to devalue the dollar. For example, if you're a government contractor, you will get paid when the dollar is worth $1. Then when the contractor pays his vendors, it may only be worth 99 cents. Then, when that vendor pays his employees, the dollar may only be worth 98 cents. And so on and so on. The farther down the food chain you are, the more you are hurt.
That makes sense. Who else benefits from inflation?
The biggest benefactors are debtors. Let's say that you borrowed $10,000 and agree to pay it back in 1 year. Let's also assume that the rate of inflation is 5%. At the end of the year, the dollar is only worth 95 cents. That means that you borrowed money with purchasing power of $10,000, and are paying it back with money that has $9,500 of purchasing power.
So the person who lent you the money is really out $500.
That's true, if he charged you no interest. If he charged you 5% interest, then he would be at break even, because you would have to pay him $500 in interest. However, even at 5% interest he is losing money because he got back the same purchasing power that he had a year ago, but he lost the use of the money for a year. That's the main reason that the federal government likes inflation. It allows them to pay back their massive debt with cheap money.
I think I need to sit down again. So explain to me why the Fed prints money in the first place when they know it's creating inflation.
Here's what happens. The federal government contracts to spend more money than they have. That means they must borrow the money from someone. So they go to the Fed and ask to borrow $10 million. But the Fed doesn't have any money either. So, they crank up the presses and print $10 million out of thin air. So the federal government gives the Fed an IOU for $10 million, and the Fed gives the government the $10 million of monopoly money. Now the federal government has enough money to pay its bills, and everyone is happy.
Wait just a minute. Didn't the Fed just make $10 million? They printed $10 million out of thin air, and used it to purchase $10 million of treasury bills.
Now you're catching on. The Fed can then sell these treasury bills, pocket the commissions, and then distribute the $10 million to its stockholders. That means that the more the federal government spends, the more it has to borrow. The more it has to borrow, the more money the Fed makes. Boy, what a scam. Is it any wonder that the Fed encourages the federal government to run up deficits every year?
Congress will never vote to revoke the Fed's charter. So, your idea to secede from the Union may be the only answer.
I hope you enjoyed this video. Please visit our website on secession. It covers the right to secede, reasons for secession, and what the new country will look like. Please tell all of your friends. We need to take action before the United States implodes. Please stay tuned to our next video where we explain why there would be no money without debt. Thank you.